Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Talks. Now we are online, and I'm very glad to see all of you here with us tonight because once again, I always say that it's a very good night to have all of you here to we do a talk, to we share knowledge and share things about career and share a lot of experience. And for you that are for the first time and don't know Golden Talks, let me briefly explain to you what is Golden Talks about. We are a program that we invite the best of the best guys from the IT world, and today we have one of the best here. And also we are also had other guys like Bob Kurtz, Sandesh Hall, Fred Dennis, Francisco Alvarez, Frank Pacho, Carlos Sierra, Rodrigo Righetti, and Flora Barriel. Look how amazing people we are already had here on the Golden Talks. And today we have a person that really, to be honest with all of you, I was not expecting when we started this project that we could have here in the Golden Talk. So we are very glad and we are very happy with that. Okay, just let me see. You are the ones that is sending messages. I can see that there are a lot of people here. As this is an English version and uh, we have a short time, I will not comment all the names here, but I would like to say a very good night, morning, or afternoon, wherever in the world you are, and welcome to the Golden Talks. So let's start. Today in the Golden Talks, we have here the amazing guy that I'm very happy to announce, and we have here Kerry Osborne. Hello, Kerry. How are you?
Hi, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
I'm very glad to be with you here. True. Okay. Thanks a lot once again to you give some of your time to do a talk with us, to share things about your career, about your experience. Thank you very much.
Yep. Happy to do it.
So, uh, to we start here, there is one question that we didn't talk, but I take some notes and I think it's a good one to start. I could see in many pictures and videos of you that you always are using a hat. Is there any special thing about that? Can you tell us?
Man, just I've gotten used to doing it. I have long hair, so
Mhm.
it mainly just keeps it out of my eyes. So that's the main reason for the hat. Just I got used to doing it
Okay,
as
that's
opposed to wearing a headband or something.
all right. That's fine. Cool. And so, to we start our talk, uh, can you tell us how was the beginning of your career? One thing that I can tell to the people that are watching us is that hey, this guy here, Kerry Osborne, worked with the first commercial version, first Oracle commercial version. Can you believe that? He really started the first new steps with the Oracle, and maybe this is one of the reasons that he is a very good guy with Oracle because he started from the beginning, right? So, Kerry, tell us how was the beginning of uh, your career in IT, how you started to think that computer and things like this was interesting. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Man, it was just fortunate for me that I ended up, working at a place that had that first version of Oracle. So I was actually in college and I was married while I was in college. So it was, basically I was looking for some way to support my family. And I went down to the placement office at the college and they had a bunch of jobs listed. And for some reason, they put the pay rate out on the side. And so I just basically, I'm like, we got to figure out a way to feed ourselves. So I'm looking at the pay rate, and there's a job for a Fortran programmer and with an oil company. And so I was getting a geology degree at the time. And the job placement said actually working with a bunch of geologists. And so I had actually written a Fortran program in an engineering class that I'd had. And so I went in and talked to the lady and somehow convinced her to set me up with an interview and ended up getting the job. So the first thing they did was they handed me this I told you a set of manuals. It was more like a magazine really than a manual for Oracle version 2. And so somehow, the scary part wasn't really that I thought I could do the job. It was more that they thought I could do the job at the end of the interview. But anyway, I got the job. And so I worked for my senior year in college, my last year in college. I worked with those guys and then took a full-time job with them when I started or when I got out of college. But it was just fortunate that, that happened.
All right. So one thing that you mentioned that I thought it's cool that you was a geologist. That's right. So before computers, you like things like rocks that you mentioned to me, and how was that? How was this change to
Yeah.
or from
I still
geology
like,
to IT?
yeah, I still like rocks actually, but
Cool.
I really wanted to be in the oil business. So, the fact that I came in through the computer side of it was again just fortunate, right? I really wanted to be in the oil business to start with, and so about 3 years after I took the full time job with those guys, they came. My title was computer geologist, which is kind of a weird title, but that was my title when I started. And so about 3 years into that job, they came to me and they said, "Hey, you're going to have to decide whether you want to be a geologist or you want to be a computer guy." And by that point, I had completely fallen in love with the computer stuff. And so I said, no question, I'd rather be a computer guy than a geologist. So, I went down that path. But yeah, just again, mostly luck, that I ended up there.
All right, that's cool. And we thank you to got that decision because after that you helped us with many things in the Oracle world, right?
Yeah, yeah. It just one thing led to another. The oil business was not great. Early in my career. And so the company that I was working for actually shut their Dallas office down, which was where I was located. And so they said, well, you've got a choice. You can either move to Houston or Denver. Denver wasn't so bad, but Houston, I definitely didn't want to go to. And or you can, leave the company and go look for something else. So I decided to leave the company and stay in Dallas. And by the time that happened, we had become a decent sized Oracle shop. That had been several years. And so as these people in the IT department moved to different companies, they're having issues with Oracle. I'd kind of become the main DBA at Standard Oil was the company. And so I started getting calls. And as I told you, it wasn't that I had a plan to become an entrepreneur. It was just that, people needed help. And so I started doing part-time work in addition to my regular full-time job. And pretty soon I couldn't do it. There was not enough hours in the day. And so I had to get a buddy to help me and then another buddy to help me. And pretty soon we had a decent sized company doing Oracle consulting work. So that was how the first company got started.
Suddenly you was like a company with a lot of buddies helping you, and you started this entrepreneurial journey, right? That's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
That's cool. And it was easy for you, like being just a consultant, and then hey, I have many people that I have now to uh, give some jobs and things like that. It was easy to manage all of these chains.
Yeah, saying anything like that is easy is probably a stretch. There's always, a lot of hard work, right? I mean, I say I've been very lucky, but also there's a lot of hard work that goes into it. But yeah, as a again, good relationships with a lot of people, which makes up for a lot of shortcomings. But as we started to get engaged with other companies, then there just wasn't enough of me to go around. And so, if I could bring in somebody that was also good at what they did, people were very open to that or seemed to be. So it didn't take long to grow that company to, a few hundred people and eventually up to 500 people. So there was a lot of good luck and hard work that went into that.
Right, sure. And this is the journey you started with your own company, and after that, uh, you worked for some years, and then you started a company with the best of the best, right? Can you tell us a little bit how was the start of the Enkitech, and how was uh, this idea to choose the best of the best? It was easy, it was not easy. Share with
Yeah,
us a little bit more about it.
sure. Well, one of the things I learned in the first company was um, managing people is not my strong suit. I don't really like having to look over people's shoulders and give them direction. So on the second company, there was a lot of lessons learned on the first one. One of the things we did, we had a lot of offices. So we spun up like 14 offices in the US. The company lasted for almost 20 years. So it was a long time. And then we had a couple in the UK as well. And one of the things that we learned was that we didn't really want to have offices. Those are big commitments with long leases that are 5, 6, 7 years long and a lot of money tied up in them. And so, the second company, when we started that one, I decided I don't want to have a bunch of offices. So I don't want to have a bunch of real estate that I'm responsible for. So let's just have an office in Dallas. And also didn't want to be managing a bunch of people. So, the idea was basically let's find the absolute best people in the world and let's let those guys, manage themselves basically without a lot of oversight. And so that company was quite a bit different, right? There was a lot of autonomy, a lot of free will, if you want to call it that, for the people to work on what they really were interested in. That comes with challenges as well, right? Like when you've got guys that are, want to work on the biggest, most difficult systems in the world because that's what interests them. Just keeping a steady supply of work that's interesting enough for people like Tanel and those kind of guys to work on, Carlos Sierra, that's the biggest challenge. It's not the biggest challenge to find work. The biggest challenge is to find work that's interesting enough to keep the guys motivated and interested in what they're doing. So the challenges changed, but it was a good experience, and we hired guys all over the world that were some of the best guys in the world, and I'm really proud of that team that we put together for sure.
All right. And Kerry, I am seeing here some comments, and I have one very interesting. Uh, this guy is from Enkitech, and he say, "Hello, boss. Good evening. Good to see you again." This message is from Ricardo Rezende.
Oh yeah, good to see you, man. I'm glad you joined.
Yeah. I can see that there are other guys that is also from Enkitech. Uh, and we have here Marcos Vinicius, Alex Zabala, it's also here.
Yeah.
And we have a very nice question from Rodrigo Jorge. He's saying, "Hey, Kerry, tell us about how the Enkitech name was originated." This is a very cool question.
Oh yeah, good. Happy to do that. Let me say something first. I'm really have an affinity for Brazil, and we built an awesome team in Brazil. So we went down there after the acquisition by Accenture of Enkitech. We had the opportunity to hire some guys down there, and we went down and we found some of the best. Again, some of the best guys in the world are located in Brazil. And so there's a really good bunch of guys down there, and I spent a fair amount of time down there, recruiting and spending time with the guys. But anyway, I have really fond memories of spending time with those guys. But yeah, the Enkitech name is kind of interesting. We when we were getting started, my partner is a sales guy. Is the best way to describe him. So he was a VP of sales at Oracle for a decade and ran a fair chunk of the United States, the southern middle part of the United States. And so anyway, when we got ready to start the company, we were trying to decide what are we going to call this thing, right? And so as sales guys are wont to do, he hired a marketing firm to come in and help us with that. And so the guy came in and he was pitching us on some names. And as we're talking to the guy, I'm looking at him. I'm like, man, you look like one of the smartest guys in the world. I mean, those glasses. He had these, smart guy looking glasses. You have glasses, and that makes you look smart, right? That's part of the shtick. And so I made some comment about it, and he got a funny look on his face. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, man. Please tell me you really need glasses. That those aren't just for looks. And he's like, well, I have to admit, he's like, I don't really need glasses. I just wear them because they make me look smarter. And I said,
Really?
you are the perfect marketing guy. So
That's cool.
anyway, they pitched us on a bunch of names. Enkitech was the one we settled on, but it wasn't based on really anything. We did figure out later that it was an anagram for necktie, which we had a basic policy that we were never going to wear neckties, and so we thought that was kind of funny, but it wasn't a forethought. It was just something that was happenstance that turned up later. So.
All right. So this is also, I'm not sure if using glasses make me a smart guy, but I think about that, or maybe I will ask for you to send me the glasses of your friend. Maybe the glasses that he was used that have some powers.
I have some
Oh.
glasses. When I have to try to look smart, I wear these as well, but it's because my eyes are not so good, not because I'm trying to look smart.
All right. One thing I can tell you, Kerry, you are a very funny guy. Yeah, this is very nice. Uh, so, still talking about Enkitech, you stayed in this company for a while. You had many projects, and then you started to focus on exadata, right? Can you tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about this time, how it was, and what happened? I know that you had one exadata for you. What a pleasure! They're very nice.
yeah. Believe it or not, we ended up with 3 exadatas and a BDA in our little lab. The little lab was, it's really small. It's barely bigger than a bathroom, but we had a lot of equipment in there. And yeah, the story was, I don't know, the company was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and we were, a lot of us were performance oriented guys, right? So we're hiring some of the best guys around the world, Tanel and Carlos and those kinds of guys, and Mauro Pagano. I mean, there's just so many of them. Rodrigo. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are really, really smart, but a lot of performance stuff. So when Exadata came out, we got pretty excited about it, and we were already dabbling with Hadoop, at the time, and this idea of having a distributed, system behind Oracle was really intriguing and interesting to us. So I came to believe that it was really going to be the wave of the future. And so I went to my partner, who again is an ex-Oracle guy, and I said, "Hey," and we had a good partnership with Oracle. We were reselling, software, et cetera. And so I said, "Hey, we need to go to Oracle and see if we can get those guys to at least loan us an Exadata, because we're really interested in this thing, and we think we can help those guys promote it and do better at selling it." And we couldn't convince them. They were just like, no way. So I went back to my partner and I said, "Look, I'd like to take a bunch of money and go buy one." And he's like, "So you're telling me you want to spend all the money that we're going to make this year, all the profit that we're going to make this year, and spend it on an Exadata?" And I'm like, "Yes, I think that's what we should do, and I think it'll really make a difference in our company." And to his credit, he, after hearing the argument, he said, "Yeah, I think you're right." So we went and bought one of the first X2s off the line, and then we bought an X3, and then we bought an X4.
Oh my
So we had,
God.
yeah. So every time a new one would come out, we would buy one, and the BDA as well. When the BDA came out, we were pretty interested in Hadoop, very early on. But anyway, the engineered systems turned out to be really, really important to us when Accenture, we sold to Accenture after about 10 years. And when they came to talk to us, it was specifically because of our expertise in the engineered systems, particularly Exadata. And so, we wrote a book about it, et cetera. But yeah, it turned out to be really important to us from a company standpoint.
It's very cool. So can you imagine that, guys? Hey, do you know Exadata? Ah, yes, I have some of ones. He's, what do you want? X two, three, four, five, and also
Yeah.
I have a book here. Did you did you already read that? So take a look. As you mentioned about the book, can you tell us briefly how was the experience and the process to write a book?
Painful.
Painful.
I wouldn't recommend it. There's no money to be made in it. It's really because you love what you're doing. And, there's some sideline benefit from a marketing standpoint, but certainly not from a financial standpoint. So that first book, I convinced Tanel to write a few chapters, and another guy named Randy Johnson that's not, well known. He's, a really smart guy that worked at Enkitech, but, he wasn't on the speaking circuit or anything, not somebody most people would know. So anyway, but it was a year-long process. and we spent a lot of time doing it, and a lot of effort, a lot of love poured into it. But it turned out to be worthwhile. There's an interesting story about the book and Brazil. So the first guy that we hired in Brazil was a guy named Felipe uh, Sabanella. I don't know if you guys know him, but anyway, he was working at Deloitte at the time. And so when we went down there, first time I went to Brazil, I met up with him, and the Accenture office, it was right after the acquisition. And so the Accenture office was right next door to the Deloitte office. And so Philippe came over for an interview. And so we're talking, and he said, "Oh man, I forgot to bring my book. I was going to get you to sign, the Exadata book, And I said, "Oh, that's no problem, man. I'll just, walk next door with you, and go up to your office and sign it up there." And he's like, "Oh, no, I don't think that would be a good idea." And I'm like, and I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Security, it's hard to get in." I'm like, "That's okay. I can just wait in the lobby." He's like, "No, I don't think that'd be a good idea either." And I didn't get it until later that he really didn't want me showing up over at Deloitte because he was afraid I'd be recognized and they'd know he was interviewing to join the Accenture team. So anyway, eventually I got his book signed for him, but that was kind of funny.
All right. So I will take this note when you come to Brazil once again. I will uh, take my book and ask you to sign too. Okay?
I would be happy to, man.
I
You'll
will
be you'll
be
be
happy
you'll be
both.
one of 20. I don't know how many I've signed. Not very many.
All right. When talking about Brazil, I know that you came to Brazil sometimes, right? And how was this trip? What did you enjoy it? And what did you most like it? Can you tell how was the experience?
In Brazil?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I love the culture. I just like the people there. So, number one, there's a lot of really smart guys there. So I'm attracted naturally to hanging around with smart guys. So I just met a lot of really smart guys there. But culture is great. We spent quite a bit of time in Sao Paulo, but we also spent a little time down south in Rio. So we had Rodrigo, RJ's from Rio. So anyway, we spent some time down there as well. There's some customers down there. So, but yeah, great country. I just enjoy it.
Right. So did you went to the Christ, Redeemer, the Sugar Love? No. Oh,
Sure.
where?
No,
Oh,
I don't know where all I went, man. I didn't keep up. Like half the time when we're out in the evenings, I wasn't keeping up with where we were going.
okay.
But yeah, we went to the original Fogo de Chao. I know that's probably just stupid for somebody that's actually from Brazil, but that was kind of cool because it's a big chain in the United States, but sort of a unique place. But yeah, food was great there, and nightlife was good. Uh, the what's the drink? It's uh, I can't remember it now. La Cacha, no,
Cachaça.
cachaça. Yes, cachaça.
Yeah, cachaça.
Yeah, so I got exposed to that a little bit. That's why I can't remember how to say it.
All right, that's cool. This is one thing that I was up to ask you. Cachaça was one of the drinks that it's very common here in Brazil. People usually like it. And there is a special one that it's called caipirinha. This one I'm almost
Carreira,
sure
yeah,
that, yeah. Did you like it?
yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. That's cool. All right. So next time when you come to Brazil, I can get you the best caipirinha of Brazil.
Yeah,
Okay?
I don't say it quite like you, but yeah, Caperhina is the way I say it, but that's Texan, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's fine. It's correct. Caipirinha. That's cool. All right. And I have another comment here, very interesting from Alex Zabala, and this led me to the next topic. And he's saying, Alex Zabala, what impressed me most about Kerry is the ability to see the changes in the technology market for the next 10 years. He's always ahead of our time. And this is a very cool thing, as we also discussed it before, because we talked about Enkitech, and then uh, you co-founded another company, and you really was in that time ahead of the time. I watched a video from Tanel from 2017, and I was astonished. Say, oh my God, he was saying this in 2017. Really,
yeah,
really nice. So can you tell us about how was uh, this change to Gluent, and what was the ideas that you started the creation of this company?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I'll back up a little bit from that. Exadata was also a, when we jumped into Exadata in the X2 timeframe, there wasn't, Oracle was having trouble getting the message across, right, and having trouble selling it. And we were convinced that it was absolutely the right thing to do. And so that was a little bit forward thinking, and I can take credit, some of the credit for that. Tanel, I may be a few years ahead, but Tanel is always like a decade ahead. So, he's just way forward thinking. And so, one of the things I think I do well is I surround myself with, guys like that, right? I say surround myself, but I managed to hang around with guys like that a lot. And so yeah, so the idea for Gluent was spawned way back. So Gluent's been around for about 6 years now. The idea has been around for 8, 9 years. And we worked on I think I told you, we worked on a big project with a big medical company, Kaiser, and they had a system that they were trying to get off of Teradata. We were pitching them on moving to Exadata, and their system cost them, word on the street was about 40 million a year just in maintenance and support on the Teradata side. So we showed them in a lengthy pilot a way to get to not just equivalent performance, but over 1,000x better performance across a really wide range of SQL, and to do it for about $1 million a year instead of 40 million. So, wildly successful pilot. And so the sad part of the story was that they decided not to go forward with that replatform, at least at that point in time. They did do it later. But at that point in time, even though they were going to save almost 120 million bucks in 3 years, by their calculation, it was going to cost more than that to rewrite this application, big complex application that ran pretty much all of their business. And so that was the point, again, 8 or 9 years ago, where we really started thinking seriously about, is there a way for us to do this replatforming kind of an exercise, but without rewriting the applications, without rewriting the SQL. And so Tanel was, very much on the front of that. Of course, Hadoop at that point was the main distributed database that we had access to. Exadata was starting to, come into vogue as well, but it's sort of a hybrid, not a real true distributed database. But anyway, so that's when we really started thinking seriously about it. And so, yeah, fast forward, we're now to the point where it's very generally accepted, right? When we talk to people now, 6 years ago when we started Gluent, we had the idea, we had a very early version of the product, and we were having to convince people that a data lake was even a good idea. They hadn't even come around to that yet. And so it was like sell the idea of a data lake, sell the idea of Hadoop, get that installed before we could even start talking about selling our own product, which is a virtualization layer between Oracle and a distributed backend like Hadoop. And so, so again, we were way ahead of the market. But the good news is, that gave us, 5 or 6 years to build a really functional product, so that now, when everybody realizes, hey, I want to be in the cloud and I want to be on some distributed database like BigQuery or Redshift or Synapse or Snowflake, something like that, I want to get there, but I have this pain of, this huge amount of money I have to spend to get there to rewrite my applications. So we have a product that, that changes those whole dynamics so that you can get there in a matter of a couple of months instead of a year or two to rewrite. And then you can take as much time as you want to rewrite if you completely want to get away from Oracle. But we offer a solution that allows you to keep running Oracle SQL engine, without having to change code, and also not have to retrain people so they can continue to be productive with Oracle SQL engine sitting in front of whatever that, that distributed backend is. So anyway, long story, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's a long and very cool story, and we can see that the Gluent it's doing very well and with a very nice approach, and I like it very much. And can you tell us a little bit of what is the next step or something like this? What are you planning for the next years or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. We want to be able to support any. Number one, we're just Oracle right now, and that's because of market share, right? Oracle has the biggest bunch of the market share, and so that's our background. So that was a good place to start because we know a lot of customers in that space. We have a decent reputation in that space, but there's other platforms like Teradata, DB2, Netezza, some of these other platforms that we believe we can expand to. Teradata, obviously, a big one, and that we're working on already. So that's one component. The back ends, we haven't finished out all the back ends that we want to. We have BigQuery and we have Snowflake in production. Synapse is in the works, and Redshift and Athena are both. We have prototypes of that, but we're not really, heads down on that yet. But we need those offerings to be fleshed out. So that's sort of a general what we're doing now. The future is really more around a data sharing platform. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to do, we already do some lineage stuff, where did that data come from? How did it get here? How's it been modified? But what we don't do is like a universal data catalog and, so that component. And so there's a lot of space there for machine learning, AI kind of techniques to be able to identify, hey, these data types are the same. If I've got a phone number, there's a phone number in 80 different systems. Those all look like phone numbers. That should be coalesced on one definition of that, and it should be the same. So all that metadata management or data catalog sort of thing is a component of it. Data lineage is definitely a big component of it as well. So that is part of the future that comes up. We already have the ability to share data amongst any application that wants it. So in the Oracle world, if we've got a BigQuery backend, any data that's in BigQuery can be presented to any Oracle database that wants it, as long as they've got privileges to get there. So that means I don't have to do ETL anymore. A big chunk of ETL just goes away. There's no reason to move from one database to another. If I've got it in my cloud-based data lake, I just present that data to anybody that wants it. I've got one copy of it. I don't have the data drift problem. I don't have the support and maintenance of all the ETL jobs and all the compute that goes along with that. So there's that's already there. But anyway, the vision is to be a data sharing platform that can provide the data that everybody needs in one place. And anyway, that's kind of where we're going.
Very clever idea. I really enjoyed that. And I have a question here from Rodrigo Jorge. He's asking, and query, do you plan or ever thought in open a new database or cloud service like in Gluent? You're talking about that now you are only focused on Oracle, right? And did you think about new databases and other
Like,
services?
does he mean like building our own database, like Yugabyte or Snowflake or something like that? Is that what he's asking?
I'm not sure, but Rodrigo, you can tell us.
Yeah,
I will say what I thought. Maybe use another database, uh, SG, uh, RDBMS, right? Other
yeah,
types of
yeah. So
RDBMS
so
actually.
definitely there are other RDBMSs on the roadmap. DB2, Teradata is at the very top of the list. SQL Server, we have a prototype for SQL Server, not a production version. So there are a number of databases that make sense. Postgres, definitely Postgres is high on the list with Teradata. And then there are other backends as well. And oddly enough, RJ may think this is kind of funny, but we're talking about, for a specific customer, having Oracle as a back end for Oracle as a front end, which sounds weird, but this particular company has DB links spread all over the place. And so the DB links are problematic from a security standpoint, and the security guys are saying you got to get rid of them. So the customer came to us and said, look, could you just like make Oracle a back end, because you've got all the security down. You can only present what you want to present. You don't have to make a lot of stuff available, and you can control it and track lineage on who's got access to it. So all you got to do really is just build a connection between Oracle and Oracle. which is kind of weird, but it may be that we end up with some systems where Oracle's talking to Oracle. But yeah, anyway, multiple databases for sure is on the roadmap. Teradata we'll start on. We're doing research on Teradata right now. That project will probably start this summer. So
Nice, cool. Rodrigo answered here. He said a message saying it's a general service, not only Gluent expertise. Maybe other types of cloud services, I suppose that he was trying to ask.
yeah, I mean, we're already having discussions about integrating with some other serverless technologies where we can already move data and drop them on all the major cloud storages. So we can drop stuff in S3 or Google Cloud Storage, et cetera. So, it's possible that we could build pipelines that, spin up some sort of serverless sort of way of ingesting data into other engines. There's also discussions going on about things like Cloud SQL in the Google world. So, which really gets into conversion of PL SQL and is the sort of the most difficult component of that. And we're having some conversations with some of the cloud vendors about how to partner on building that and using some of our IP that we've already built on the SQL translation side of it. PL SQL is a little bit different beast because of the procedural language nature of it. But basically building some sort of a syntax tree and AST, that can be used to translate to a different procedural language. And so that's in the works and in the research stage right now. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, as you can imagine, when you got a bunch of smart guys running around thinking about new ideas, there's always stuff that, is going on.
All right, that you, all of you are is like a plane, right? Flying very fast. That's nice. And
yeah. And we have to be able to change the wings on the plane while it's in the air. That's the hard part.
Yeah, cool. Right. And as we were talking about new technology and so on, when you started with Oracle with the new commercial version and so on, it was like the bone of a relational database. It was the concept of a relational database was new, and
Yep.
nowadays we have a lot of new concepts too. Do you have anything that you want to share about this experience? Because all that we are living now with cloud stuff, with a lot of new different database services and so on. And do you have anything that you can correlate?
Uh, well, I guess, let's see. One of the things about the early days was we had no idea if Oracle was going to be successful or not, right? So we had Sybase and Ingress and Oracle, all vying to be, the vendor of relational databases, right? It was really, when I got started, it was sort of just an idea that somebody had, built a program for. It was an interesting time, man. C, was really, when I started, C was just a book. There was a book that these guys, Kernighan and Ritchie, wrote. That was a definition of the language in a little small book. There was no, it wasn't well defined at all. And in fact, Oracle was one of the very first companies to use C as a language. And it was a differentiator for them because they were originally written in Fortran. And they, Larry, I guess, made the decision, hey, we need to be in a language that's more portable so that we can port to all these different operating systems that existed at that time. And it was a big advantage because they were able to move to all these platforms and could sell it pretty much on any hardware that anybody was running. But I mean, it was the Wild Wild West back then. We had a customer. Oh, geez, I don't even know when it was. Long time ago. Let's just say that.
Don't worry about
That was
that.
running Oracle. Yeah, before you were born, probably. But it was. They were running Oracle on an IBM mainframe on MVS. So there's not a lot of people that have had to work in that kind of environment, but I got a chance to do that one time.
I worked on it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Or are you doing it now?
I was a GCL guy. I was the guy that programmed the jobs and schedule the process
Yeah.
uh, to be executed on the mainframe.
Yeah.
I
That's
worked for
awesome.
2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
very good
So
times.
anyway, we were involved in this project, and I had written some stuff in C. It was a user exit to SQL Forms of all things, and that was part of the product that we were selling into hospital systems. And these guys were running on MVS on a mainframe, running Oracle, which I only saw a couple of times in my career. But anyway, when we went to deploy this thing, they said, "Well, we don't have a C compiler." IBM said we don't have a C compiler. There is no C compiler for MVS. Such a thing doesn't exist. So we had to go to Oracle and ask them if they would loan us a copy of their C compiler so we could take it and put it on MVS on this IBM so that we could compile this code that I'd
Oh
written
my God.
so that we could get our
Cool.
program, our application to run. So that's kind of the world, that I grew up in. So it was very, very Wild West, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it's kind of that way now. We don't know who's going to win, right? We've got some major competitors. Oracle's pretty far behind, but certainly Google, Microsoft, and AWS are vying for who's going to rule the world, and most likely all three of those guys will survive, and people will put data on. My view of the world is that it'll be a multi-cloud world. We'll have, and you're already starting to see the cloud vendors rolling out their own products that will connect to another cloud. So Google, for example, has this thing called Omni that lets them run BigQuery on Google, but also on AWS. So you can have data spread across potentially all three of the major public clouds. And so I think it will be a multi-cloud world. But again, it's so early, we don't really know, who's going to win. I know, Google and Microsoft are growing much faster than Amazon. Amazon seems to be more focused on the low-hanging fruit because they were the first to get there. And so, when you talk to those guys, they throw around numbers like 90% of the databases are small and easy to handle, and we can just put them in RDS, and we're not so focused on the big, difficult stuff. But my view of the world, because I've got a set of blinders on that focuses me at big, difficult things from in the database world, I kind of have the view that the guys that can handle the biggest, most complex things are the guys that are going to win, right? Because the easier stuff is probably going to follow the really hard stuff. So anyway, it's yet to be seen how how that's going to shake out. And so in that regard, it's very similar, right? We're just we don't know how it's going to turn out. So the best thing I think that we can do is like keep our eyes and ears open and be looking at the new stuff and try to discern, which one's going to be the best technology solution, right? Because those are the guys that are going to tend to win, although you also got to kind of keep an eye on the business aspect. One of the reasons Oracle won was not necessarily because they were the best, but they were very, very good at marketing, very, very good at selling. And so you got to keep an eye on both ends of it to really understand where it's going.
Right, right. This is your last comment. I would say that this is a good point that I will ask. Uh, who's gonna win, the best or the most used?
Yeah, I think well, it's yet to be seen. Google, I think, is like really, really smart guys and doing some really cool stuff. Traditionally, they've been kind of a science experiment, so they weren't really good at selling, particularly into enterprises. But Curry and going over there makes a huge difference, right? And they're really a lot more focused on that now. So I think, from a sales standpoint, they're going to do a much, much better job. Microsoft's always been very good at selling to enterprises. And so they have an advantage in that regard, no doubt. Amazon was just first, right? They were the first. And so they have a huge head start on everybody. And so it's going to be difficult to catch up with those guys. So all of them have something in their favor, no doubt. And so, we'll see how it turns out. But in my view, probably all three of them are going to do well. And, probably most big enterprises are going to be spread across all three of them. They're not going to be focused on just one.
So, as you mentioned, let's keep it with open eyes and see what's gonna happen. Yeah, right. I have one question here that is very interesting. It was not me the question, but I like it. It's from Rodrigo Martins. He's asking, Kerry, what's your opinion about Oracle Golden Gate and the roadmap with microservices world?
Say the last part again. I didn't catch that.
Okay, and what's your opinion about the Oracle Golden Gate and the roadmap with microservices world?
Oh man, I'm not really tuned into the microservices part of the roadmap, so I can't really speak to that. But in general, Golden Gate's a really solid product. So, we spent years doing streams and keep trying to keep the balls in the air, and that was a super difficult thing to do. So Golden Gate came in and solved a huge problem when they got acquired. And I'm a pretty big fan of Golden Gate and how it works. The fact that we can, push processing off of the main production database, et cetera. But man, I don't know what to say about the microservices because that's just not my thing. Gluent does movement of data as well. So in some ways we compete with Golden Gate, but we don't do the same approach that they do in terms of log mining and being able to stream data the way they do, right? We move a set of data at a time, which has some advantages to it, because we've got a set and a clear boundary as to how that set was come up with, as opposed to streaming a row at a time and trying to keep that boundary in sync while you're streaming data. Because we're this virtualization platform between two worlds. But anyway, I really like Golden Gate, and I think we have a number of customers that where Gluent is working directly with Golden Gate as the movement component, and it works very well, and we're happy with it. So.
All right, that's fine. So, one more thing that I wanted to ask you, Curry, is you mentioned a lot of interesting uh, history, a lot of entrepreneur approaches, right? And with this, in this period, did you have anyone or any person that influenced you in to
That
be a
influence?
businessman? Yep.
That's a good question.
Cool.
My dad was a real estate broker, when I was growing up, and so he had his own little real estate business. And I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot of things not to do from him. So it was kind of a mixed bag, some
Which
good
also is
things.
important, what to do and
It's
also not what
also
not to
important,
do.
right?
Cool.
So I saw him do a few things that I was like, I don't want to make that mistake. And but yeah, I learned a lot from my dad in that regard. But man, I wasn't, I was a technical guy, so I wasn't really focused on being an entrepreneur, being a business guy. That was never really my goal in life. After that was sort of thrust upon me, there were certainly people that had a big influence on me. Um, some of my partners. So there was a guy that was a partner in the original um, in a software company that I worked for early on before I started my first company. I was actually an investor in that company. And he was also an investor in Blockbuster, when Blockbuster was getting started. So he had a good, entrepreneurial bent. He was also a geologist, by the way. So that, we had some common
Now,
ground there.
now it's making some sense, not because of the IT and things, it's because he was
Yeah.
a geologist.
And they
Cool.
had a little software company that I worked for. So they were selling software into the oil
Mhm.
business. And so that was kind of my first exposure to a small startup entrepreneurial kind of company. So I would say his name is Bruce Rowden, not anybody that anybody would have heard of. His partner in his first company, though, was a guy named David Cook, who was the founder of Blockbuster. So there was some common lineage there with some guys that were very successful as entrepreneurs in Dallas, early in my career.
That's very nice. And what tips would you say for a young entrepreneur?
Ah, uh,
What to do and also the most important, what not to do.
yeah. Well, don't sign any personal guarantees for loans. So, it's pretty tempting to, when you're starting a business to set up a line of credit and to, personally guarantee those loans. You don't want to get your personal life tied up with your business life. So that would be one thing that is something I learned the hard way. Um, Probably the main thing I would say is that, hard work makes up for a lot. I mentioned that already early on. So the harder I work, the luckier I got, in general. So the guys that I've seen be the most successful are the guys that work really hard. And, you see really, really smart guys. One of the sort of weird things about life is the more talented people are, the less likely they are to be hard workers. Right. And partly that's just a learned behavior. If you're smarter than everybody else, or you're a better athlete than everybody else, you don't have to work as hard. And so you tend to not work as hard. And that's a very bad habit. And it hurts you a lot of times in business, especially if you're trying to start something. So Michael Jordan's a good example of that, right? Super talented guy, but he outworked everybody in the gym every single day. And so there are just not very many people that combine those two things. So I guess one of the main things I would, encourage people to do is, you may be the smartest guy in the world, have some great ideas, but don't rely on that. You've got to put in the hours and the effort, if you want to be successful as well. So.
And sometimes these kind of guys, it's like the treated like the bad guys, right? Just because they are hardworking, right?
Yeah. Well, and they're competitive too. There's a lot of characteristics that help make you successful. Competitiveness is another one. I guess if there was anything else, I would say it's that team everything is about team. So, if you have a big ego and you think you can solve all the problems of the world, you're probably not going to be successful, because everybody has a different view of the world based on their experiences, right? And the best job you can do is if you've got multiple people that have different backgrounds, different views on the problem, all working together to try to solve that problem. And that's the whole theory of Enkitech, right? You got guys with different backgrounds, different experiences, and the sum of the team is way more than, or the team together is worth way more than the sum of the parts, right? It's not, there's no way that the individuals could do the things independently that they could do as a group. And so, yeah, that's another thing I guess I would, encourage people to think about.
Right. Thank you for that. And I always say that the best thing of GoldenTalks that all of this is recorded, and this was a very nice and very smart thoughts that you shared with us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And Kerry, I have here another message for a guy called Eduardo Clara. Do you know this guy?
I don't know that.
You don't know that guy? Okay. He say, "Hello guys, happy to watch Boss speaking." He's one of the guys that also gave an interview here in the GoldenTalks, and it was very cool.
Oh, great. Good to hear from you, Eduardo, man. I hope things are going well.
And we have also here Leonardo Ciccone. He's saying hello, awesome to have Mr. Osborne here. Cool, and it's amazing. It really is. Uh, so, Kerry, we talk about many things, and I have some more questions to ask to you. And if you guys want to ask anything to Kerry, please go ahead. And this is the time, okay?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Kerry, next thing that I wanted to ask is some things about you and things like what do you like to drink? I have some ideas, but please tell us what do you like to
What are
drink?
your ideas before I tell you what I actually like to drink?
You also mentioned that you like some beer or some caipirinha, right?
Yeah.
And
And
you have a very nice cup, right? That you was drinking something right now.
yeah,
Yeah,
did you see my cap?
yeah, this one, right?
I don't know if you can
Oh,
see it, but it's got
let me
Enkitech.
just put bigger. Just hold on a second. Okay. Ah, I can see that right now.
Yeah, it's got
Very
Enkitech. It's
good.
an Enkitech glass. So,
What
so
what
we
we
were,
needed to do to have one of these? Tell me.
there are very few of these in existence anymore. That was from,
Oh.
10 years ago or so. I've got maybe 5 of them left. But when we did branding of stuff, we tried to do beer glasses.
Good.
It was, part of what we did. But yeah, I like beer. I'm kind of a non-discriminatory drinker. I'll just drink just about anything. So I like a little wine. I like a little beer. This happens to be cider. This happens to be a pear cider of all things. And
Nice.
I like a little bit of whiskey. I'm not a big, hardcore whiskey drinker, but occasionally I'll have a little glass of whiskey, an old fashioned or something like that. But mostly it's wine or beer, or cider.
Okay, okay, cool. And what about sports? What do you like to do any
Um,
sport or any
yeah,
exercise?
I used to love to play basketball. I played, 3 or 4 times a week until I was 50. So I haven't been to a gym. COVID kind of completely shut that down, so I haven't been to a gym in a couple of years, really. But yeah, I love basketball.
That's maybe why you mentioned also Michael Jordan, right?
Maybe so.
Uh,
I did play a little bit in college. I was never. I'm not that tall. I'm only about 6 foot tall. So, but I did manage to be on a college team for a year anyway.
And one more thing, what about music? What kind of music do you like to listen?
That's a good question. I am a musician, so
Ah, cool. I saw
yeah,
something related to with a guitar that you have, and yep.
yeah,
Tell us
yeah.
more
I
about this.
played I played guitar my whole life. I played little keyboards, little drums, little bass, little
Oh, really a
harmonica.
musician,
I mean,
many
yeah.
instruments. Very
Yeah,
cool.
so I mean, I've been paid to play. I played in club bands for many many years. Never really famous, but my claim to fame is I did get to open for Steely Dan one time, and I did get to open for Elvis Costello, if you ever heard of him, one time. So so a little bit of success, but not real, not real famous or anything. We recorded a couple of CDs as well, but when I was right out of college, I real quickly came to the decision that I wasn't going to be able to support my family doing that, and so I needed to, make that a hobby, something that I enjoyed to do, but I wasn't going to make a living doing it because, really you have to be in the top, just like playing basketball. If you want to make a living doing that, you've got to be in the top thousandth of a percent or something like that. You're not going to do it unless you're just like fantastically gifted and or fantastically lucky. And so I decided I didn't want to pursue that as a career. But
All right, very nice. And we have some more questions here. And Rodrigo Jorge is asking, Kerry, what's the most important risk you took and why? Was it building that exadata?
the most
By
important
sorry, by
decision,
not be building. Sorry, by was it buying that exadata?
yeah. So the most important decision that I've ever made,
Yeah, the most important
hmm,
risk you took.
risk that
Yes.
I took. And that's a hard one. I haven't. I might
Was
have to
it
think
buying
about that.
that exadata?
That was definitely a big risk. Um, I don't know. Gluent's a pretty big risk. So, there was a significant amount of investment. And so, putting your own money in is one thing, but talking other people out of their money, is a big risk of your reputation and your reputation, I guess. So that may be the riskiest thing that I've ever done is go to, guys that I respect that respect me and ask them to put money into this thing. So not because it's not a great idea, not because there's not a huge market for it, but because every startup is very risky. I mean, it's you're starting with an idea and you're trying to turn that into a real business. That's not an easy thing to do. Most of them fail, and so that's probably one of the more risky things. Um, Other than that, man, it's a software company is inherently more risky than a services company too. I'll say that. So, services companies, you basically can, you and a couple of buddies, you can start doing work for people and you get paid every month, as you go along. It's very different with software, right? You're going to invest a ton of money, you're going to build a product, and then you're going to see if you can sell it and make any money out of it. So
Yep.
it's kind of like building spec houses, right? You go build a house and then you see if you can sell it, as opposed to being a builder that's on contract that's going to get paid to build the house, and you already know that you're going to get paid for it, right? It's a very different sort of approach. So yeah, I'd say the software company is probably the most risky thing.
Yeah. Yeah, risk and challenge too, right?
Yeah, yeah, and nothing that's worthwhile is ever easy. I'll say that. So anything that you do that really is worthwhile takes a lot of effort, and probably a fair amount of risk. And so yeah, I believe that.
Okay, cool. And uh, I have one more question here from Erika Nagamini. She is saying, Kerry, what is the most successful thing you have done during your career? Good question.
Um, Most successful thing I've done in my career. I'm going to say that the thing I'm the most proud of is the teams that I've built and the work environment that we've been able to create for people. So I feel best about supporting a lot of people's families and giving them a place to work that they love going to work and they love the team that they're working with. So there's scores of people that we hear from repeatedly that are like, Enkitech was the best place I ever worked, or ThinkSpark, the previous company, was the best place I ever worked, or Gluent is the best place that I've ever worked. And so that's not really on me. That's, it's a part of that team. So there are people that it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You're trying to get the right kind of people that can work with each other and that fit together. And sometimes great people, don't fit. And so you have to be judicious about how that works. But the thing I'm most proud about is the kind of culture that we've built in the companies that we've put together, and the great lifestyles and work environments that people have been able to be in.
All right, all right. And what's your thoughts about the DBA career change caused by the cloud? Leonardo Ciccone is asking.
Man, I think that's a loaded question, really. I don't think if you're an infrastructure DBA guy and you're 30 years old that you're going to finish your career doing that, right? If you're 55, you probably can milk that for the rest of your career and be done. But if you're younger than 40, you probably need to be thinking about changing what you're doing. And by infrastructure DBA, I mean guys that are doing installs and patching and adding storage and the traditional sort of DBA tasks, infrastructure kind of tasks, because all that's going to be automated away. So you need to be learning new things, automation, right? You need to be learning, how to use Ansible and tools like that to automate things, because anything that you're doing repetitively, it's going to go away. You're not going to be doing that 5 years from now, probably. So that's one thing. If you're doing, so what does that mean? So you've got to learn to be an automator or a developer. You're basically turning into a developer to some degree, right? Because even building automation stuff is a development kind of a task. So the closer you can get to the development side of the business, the more longevity you're going to have in terms of what you're doing. There's still a huge amount of value in that background that you've got in the DBA space, particularly around performance and that sort of thing. But you're going to have to go to up the scale in terms of the value that you're providing, right? It's not going to be enough just to be able to do the latest patch and do it better than anybody else, because that job is going away. So that's one thing. The tools that we're using too are changing rapidly, right? So the relational database world that we're used to, it's never going away on the transactional side. So Oracle's the best transactional engine in the world. I still believe that. I don't believe that's going anywhere in the near future. On the analytics side, there are lots and lots of other options at this point. And honestly, even on the transaction side, the cloud native engines, the Googles and Microsofts, they're going to have their own engines. They already have their own engines. A lot of them are Postgres based, because that's, you've got an open source set of software already that you can modify to your liking. And so I would suggest that you broaden your horizons and start looking at some of the other options out there. particularly Postgres would be one. There's a ton of new companies that are vying for attention, and some of those probably will be successful. But I think Postgres-based engines are going to be the main one that is going to kind of rule the world of the future. So I definitely would be learning everything I can about Postgres, and because all the cloud vendors, what they're offering is all based on Postgres. So anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on current, status.
Right. What amazing thoughts that you shared with us. Thanks for that. Really nice. And guys, we are almost at the end of our Golden Talks of today. And we have a question here that we ask to everyone, and is what is success to Kerry Osborne? Can you share with us?
uh, Man, that's a hard one too. I love what I do, and so success to me is to be able to keep doing what I do. And a big part of that is building teams and being involved with teams of really smart guys. And so success to me is to be able to hang out with the smartest guys in the world and have conversations with them. Right. Um, so that's what I enjoy the most. I love being around the ocean, and I would like to be able to spend more time doing that. But that's not success. That's just a byproduct of having had some success financially. But what I really love, and I don't know if I'll ever quit working, man, to be honest. So I tried to retire once a few years ago, and it lasted about three
Really?
weeks. Yeah, it lasted about 3 weeks, and then I was like, I've got to do something else, right? I got to get engaged somewhere else. So success to me really is being mentally engaged with interesting problems to solve. I like solving problems, and I like doing it with teams of really smart people. So that's success to me.
Right, right. And are you in any way a workaholic guy? As you
Oh
said
yeah,
that you try to retire and then you keep going.
yeah, no doubt. It's it's part of it's a characteristic of a lot of people in the United States anyway. Just sort of a cultural thing. But yeah, I'm definitely a workaholic. I spend an awful lot of time, even if I'm not sitting in front of a keyboard. You know, it's always rolling around in the back of my head. So yeah, I'm a workaholic.
Somehow I can understand you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just part of me.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have here on Golden Talks today Kerry Osborne. So, Kerry, I want to thank you once again to you share your time, your thoughts, your career, knowledge, and experience. Thank you very much to be here with us today. I really enjoyed that, and as I mentioned in the beginning, I very happy, and I was never mad to have you here when we started this, and that's why. Uh, I'm very happy today and very proud that we did a Golden Talks with you. Thanks
Yeah,
for that.
yeah. No problem, man. As I told you, I have a big place in my heart for guys from Brazil, so that was a part of it. But
Oh,
yeah, I'm happy to do it, and I'll say obrigado and
obrigado. Oh, that's correct.
obrigado. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So
All right.
that's it. Uh, Thank you everyone that also watched us in this Golden Talks, and see you on the next session. And I always finish this talk saying that uh, if you like the video, don't forget to give the like, and if you are not subscribed on the channel, subscribe it, but do it now, otherwise you're gonna forget. Okay. And the most important thing is replicate knowledge with the word and share this video. Okay, so thank you and see you guys on the next Golden Gate session. Oh, sorry, Golden Gate no Golden Talk session. Bye bye. See you.
All right. Bye bye, guys. Nice talking to you.